Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thanks, as always, for stopping by. I'm grateful. Let me start with two video links that are currently uploaded on the website. One is of Lee Nike presenting earlier this week here in Nairobi. He's the CEO of TransUnion Africa, and this is all about making smarter decisions in a digital consumer era. Very interesting, wide sweep of what we're seeing going on, well worth listening to. And then a forum that I moderated on banking. Included in that is Lee Bilawino, Kenya Bankers economist Jared Osoro, Equity Bank's Nyaga, Dr. Leonard Muthiga of KCB, and Standard Chartered's Javed Chowdhury. And that too was a very interesting discussion, well worth listening to as well. The euro just hit 118 on a hawkish ECB. The ECB chief economist Pret signalled a June 14 meeting on QE's future will be live, and I think we'll see a further recovery in the euro in the short term. Home thoughts, listen to this, Miriam Makeba performing, and I can't pronounce it, Kwong Kwathwani, the click song in the DRC in 1974. And also something else that I came across via a retweet by Howard French, Homowo by Bassa Bassa. And that really is terrific, I must say. The new reissue of Homowo by Bassa Bassa is a captivating 1970s dance music from Ghana. Fela Kuti believed this band possessed magical powers. Dom DeLillo, we're all one beat away from becoming elevator music. Russia on Wednesday successfully launched its Soyuz MS-09 spacecraft carrying 3 crew members to the International Space Station. That's from the People's Daily in China. Images at their passionate and truthful best are as powerful as words can ever be. This is Cornell Kappa Magnum Photos. Robert Kennedy, who was the brother of the assassinated US President John Kennedy, was assassinated himself 50 years ago. This photograph is from All About Africa, and it shows Robert Kennedy visiting Soweto, where he drew the attention of the US to the apartheid evil and infuriated white South Africans of the day. He said, only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. And he also said there are people in every time and every land who want to stop history in its tracks. They fear the future, mistrust the present, and invoke the security of a comfortable past, which in fact never existed. Kim Jong-un is going to love this. This is Rudy Giuliani, who said the North Korean leader got on his hands and knees and begged for the summit to be held. Rudy Giuliani really is in the habit of making some quite preposterous statements. In 3000 BC, women in Syria drove to work. In 2018 AD, women in Saudi Arabia are yet to drive. The difference is more than 5,018 years in civilization. That's Shihabi Fares. Joint statement urges United States to refrain from taking action to harm Europe's security interests. AFP. France, Britain, Germany, and the EU on Wednesday sent the United States a joint official request for their companies to be exempt from punitive measures resulting from fresh sanctions on Iran. As allies, we expect that the United States will refrain from taking action to harm Europe's security interests of the letter. French Economy Minister Bruno Le Maire said the 3 countries and the EU were asking the US to exempt European businesses doing legitimate trade in Iran from all extraterritorial American sanctions. These businesses must be able to pursue their activities, he wrote on Twitter. The plea comes as European leaders scramble to save the hard-fought deal signed between Iran and world powers in 2015, under which Tehran agreed to limits on its nuclear capacities in exchange for relief from crippling economic sanctions. Analysts say European firms which have rushed to invest in Iran after the lifting of sanctions over the past 3 years have the most to lose from the renewed sanctions. Several major companies, including France's Total and the Netherlands' Maersk, have already said it will be impossible to stay in Iran once the sanctions are fully reimposed over the next 6 months, unless they receive explicit exemptions from Washington. And essentially, Iran's AEOI chief Salehi is now in Natanz, where he's opening a facility for production of new generation centrifuges. And you can see that in this photograph that Abbas Aslani tweeted. But I think what you're going to see is the US has the coercive instruments to force the Europeans to back down. And as I said previously, they're going to weaponize SWIFT and the financial payment system. Beijing warns US against running amok after B-52s buzz South China Sea islands. This is Sputnik. I previously said in an article called China Rising, apart from a few half-hearted and timid FONOPs, China has established control over the South China Sea. It has created artificial islands and then militarized those artificial islands across the South China Sea. It is a mind-boggling geopolitical advance, any which way you care to cut it. But the Europeans seem to be also adding some heft to these US efforts. Europe has entered into the escalating contest for supremacy in the South China Sea, the Asia Times is reporting. In what could be a seismic shift, France and the United Kingdom have indicated their commitment to prevent any single nation, namely China, from dominating a vital sea line through which over $5 trillion of trade travels every year. As permanent members of the United Nations Security Council and status quo nuclear powers, the two European nations add significant geopolitical heft to ongoing efforts to constrain Chinese maritime assertiveness in the area. As the US struggles to check China's naval ambitions, other allied major powers are stepping up. For the past 4 years, the US Navy has conducted so-called FONOPs to challenge China's sweeping territorial claims and expanding military footprint in the area. The naval patrols and operations, however, have apparently not been robust enough to deter China's fast militarization of the features it controls. Indeed, Beijing has pointed to America's FONOPs as provocations that justify its recent moves to fortify its positions in the maritime area. Similar to France, the UK has also been conducting FONOPs in the South China Sea. After years of buck-passing, America's European allies are beginning to share the growing burden of preventing China's domination of the international waters. But with their insertion, the maritime disputes have become an even more complex mix of jostling and jousting superpowers. I don't think China's going to take very kindly to the European intervention in this matter at all. Macron compares phone calls with Trump to sausages. You don't want to know what's inside, he said. Refugees now make up 1% of the world population, according to the Global Peace Index. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar crossed 118.05. Dollar index 93.50. Japanese yen 110.01. Swiss franc 0.9848. The pound 134.36. The Australian dollar 0.7652. India rupee 67.065, and India raised interest rates for the first time since 2014 yesterday. South Korean won 1068.39. the Rial 384.71, Egyptian pound 17.8580, and the Rand 12.7131. And I think the Rand's a bit of a buy. Dollar index currently at 93.50. I'm expecting further slippage on the strengthening euro dollar, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Euro, this is another chart from Z Schneeweiss, and here too I'm expecting a further run higher. Most valuable brands in Asia, guess who's on top? It's WeChat. Borrowing costs across the euro area rose with yields in Italy after the ECB's chief economist said the ECB will debate ending its bond purchase at next week's meeting. You can see, and I've been speaking about this, 5th of February, I wrote about Hallison days, and how, it was where I thought we were exiting a period of Hallison days. And then earlier in September 2016, I wrote a piece, Mirrors on the Ceiling with Pink Champagne on Ice. And I was kind of saying everyone's going to want to exit at the same time, and that it was a very artificial market and long-term bond yields. JP Morgan compared to Deutsche Bank. This is a chart from Reuters. Jamie at Reuters, take a look at the differential. Peter L. Brandt, who I follow, he's a chartist and rather a good one, is saying that Bitcoin's getting ready to rock and roll. And I think I kind of agree with him. We're last trading at 7,700. Commodity markets, gold, 1297.50 trading last. But if we see a weaker dollar, I think we can pop over 1,300. US crude oil futures settled at $64.73, down 1.21%. But subsequently have regained the $65 mark. Emerging markets, as I said, first of all, take a look at these comments from the Indian central bank governor and the FT warning about a crisis, which I warned about in the middle of May. And India hiked rates yesterday for the first time since 2014. Sub-Saharan Africa, Ethiopia. I did a couple of interviews yesterday, and one of the comments I was making that if you want to disrupt, which I think the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is trying to do, you have to move at dizzying speed, and he is. I also think, that it's the idea of opening up the financial side, not the banking sector, but allowing people to come and co-invest with the government is potentially a massive change. But I was saying it's a change made by necessity. Ethiopia is talking about majority stakes still being held by the state, but shares in Ethio Telecom, Ethiopian Airlines, Ethiopian Power, and the Maritime Transport and Logistics Corporation will be sold to both domestic and foreign investors. It was referring to the state monopolies in the electricity, telecoms, and logistics sectors, as well as the highly profitable national flag carrier. But the reason I'm saying that these reforms have been made out of necessity is Ethiopia's foreign reserves amounted to only $3.2 billion by the end of the 2016-2017 fiscal year, the equivalent of less than 2 months' worth of imports. Ethiopia is, however, one of the few countries to still have a state monopoly in telecoms. David Pilling is calling it a last-ditch gamble for Ethiopia's miracle on the Nile. Africa's boldest experiment in development is in mortal danger after holding it together for 27 years, he says. The Tigrayan-led clique that has ruled Ethiopia with some success and much repression since 1991 is at risk of implosion. And it's a rather good essay he's written there. And he said all this makes Mr. Abiy look less like a patsy for the regime and more like a Mikhail Gorbachev. The people who have overseen Ethiopia's development master plan for a quarter of a century will be desperately hoping he can keep their show on the road. But they also know how the Gorbachev years ended. And my piece, overnight was, I was saying the big news in Africa is Ethiopia. Ethiopia signaled its intention to comply with the 2000 Algiers Agreement and the 2002 Border Commission ruling. The Boundary Commission awarded the contested town of Badme to Eritrea, which Addis refused to accept, leading to years of a no-war, no-peace stalemate. You will recall that H.E. Abiy Ahmed tweeted on 29 March 2018, "It is time. Let's build a wall of love between Ethiopia and Eritrea," and followed up yesterday with another tweet, "I meant it, Isaiah," and plans to privatize state-owned railways, sugar factories, industrial parks, hotels, and manufacturing companies. And I was saying that decision has been made out of necessity. The central bank had only 1 or 2 months' worth of FX reserves. The IMF had already put Ethiopia on notice and pronounced them at high risk of debt distress. And their biggest lender, China, had announced that they too were maxed out on Ethiopian risk. The top-down infrastructure model has run out of road, debt finance overload, need to get more equity on the Ethiopia Inc. balance sheet, but it's also a harbinger for many other countries who have gone down this particular road. Everyone has seen what China did in Sri Lanka. They took control of the Hambantota port for 99 years. And PM Abiy has seen the writing on the wall and is avoiding being Hambantoted. On 17th October 2016, when the first state of emergency was introduced, I said the government need to change tack and effect a course correction. And history shows us that this course correction is one of the most difficult things to pull off. The Prime Minister is proving a disruptor and moving at lightning speed, which is the correct clock speed for disruption. Imagine, I asked, if he makes peace with Eritrea, moves to a more free market model and lances the political boil, all in 12 months. I think he crowds everyone in bigly. That's the optimistic scenario. And as I said, he's seen the writing on the wall. And again, just to reiterate, if you really want to disrupt, you've got to move at lightning speed. And that's what he's seemingly doing. I think he's pulling it off so far. Ethiopia, of course, has long been a target of some of Africa's biggest companies. Now foreign investors may finally get their big break. And in particular, I think M-Pesa gives Bob Collymore Safaricom the edge in terms of muscling in into Ethio Telecom. Apparently, according to Boris Johnson, Angola wants to join the Commonwealth family, which is an interesting development. President Museveni says we are rich in everything except solutions in his State of the Nation address. Congo's looting and killing machine moves into high gear. We've spoken about this severally. And this is a really in-depth article on the Daily Beast, saying not one person ascribes the atrocities in the golden rich Ituri province to inter-ethnic or inter-tribal violence, the reason cited in most international media and diplomatic accounts. The state has been repurposed to privatize Congo's extraordinary wealth in the hands of the head of state. I think that's a fact. South African all shares down 2.39% year to date. Dollar versus rand, I think you buy the rand at this point. We're at 12.71. Egyptian pound is at 17.8580. Nigerian all shares back into positive territory, 0.5%. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 20.4% year to date. FDI flows to Africa slumped to $42 billion in 2017, a 21% decline from 2016, adding further pressure to a lot of African countries. Afrobarometer came up with a very interesting survey in which they asked, do citizens in East Africa still want a free media? Afrobarometer finds weakening popular support. And I said that's seriously a riddle of a poll, in my opinion. Kenya, private sector activity falls in May. Manufacturing and services fell to 55.4 in May from 56.4 in April. but anything above 50 denotes growth, anything below contraction. So we're still growing, just not at the pace that we grew the previous month. Demand is softening from April's 16-month high. Qureshi said businesses were also watching to see if there will be an amendment or modification to a law capping commercial interest rates in place since 2016. Last month, the central bank criticized the Financial Markets Conduct Bill, which proposes the creation of a regulator in addition to the central bank to deal with the conduct of lenders. As I said previously, I think that's a rogue bit of legislation. Kenya shilling is firm at 100.795. Nairobi all share is up 3.18% year to date and down 10.134% since striking a record high on April 5. As I said, I fully expect Vodacom to work through Safaricom, and I think this can add up to 20% to Safaricom's share price. It's a big deal in Ethiopia's 100 million market and ripe for the taking for M-Pesa in particular, in my opinion. NSE 20 is still down 10.18% year to date. And thank you kindly for stopping by.